So today's a small update, and they've already been unboxed, mostly because of the thing on the bottom. At the top here you can see it's RPG Maker MV. I'm a bit of a sucker for always buying these, even though I'm not sure if they're really that different from anything, but, you know, RPG Maker. Here we see Pokemon, the series Sun and Moon Ultra Legends, The Last Grand Trial. You can kind of see here the most important character, Mimikyu. Although that said, I do not know what it's like in this one. All I know is there's 18 episodes, and I am trying to remember if I even remembered to get everything. But I don't know. We're just gonna at least go inside. CEV. And the middle evolution for the water starter. I'm drawing a blank on the names. But yeah, 2 discs. Next up is the reason why these were not packages, and that's a One Piece. Because, of course, I have my Friday friend, and he was very excited to see more of it. You know, content-wise on the inside, you know, it's pretty straightforward, simple. You know, I wasn't expecting today to be a very big update, but here's this week's anime DVD collection update. So I was hopeful I would watch more this week. It was definitely better than last week, but for some of the reasons I didn't watch more than the basic things. So, first of all, I did throw The Demon Girl Next Door in, and it's, I want to say okay, but I think it's better than that. It's good. It's weird. So, like, there are things about it that feel a little inconsistent, that don't feel like they necessarily hampered it, but I think it's possible they could have. But it's hard to kind of think of if that would be good or not. So the basic premise is that our main character, the red-haired cute girl, right? That's kind of the point of this show, is she's cute, I guess. But she wakes up and she suddenly has horns and a tail, and that's because her ancestors finally been able to reach out to her, and her demonic powers have awakened. But it's supposed to be kind of a cutesy comedy sort of show. So she's basically ill-suited for the role of being a demon and battling magical girls in order to free her clan and take over the world or something like that. And it's interesting because that's kind of like front and center. It kind of raises the question, okay, well, in what way is she not suited to be a demon girl doing that? You kind of have 2 things that maybe aren't exactly just separate, but are kind of notable in that, or they're just kind of 2 main themes, and that's personality conflict or capability conflict. And this show is trying to do both, and I kind of feel like they should feel like they step on each other's toes more than they do, but I didn't feel that while watching it, but maybe other people do. Because basically, the idea is the personality conflict. So, like, you got shows like, was it Mao Yo? I don't remember. Where you have the Demon King, and it's like, oh, well, they're actually a really nice person. They want to work with the hero. And, you know, that one's kind of cool and heartwarming and stuff. So you got, she just doesn't have the personality. And this show kind of plays as if that's the case. She's just too nice to be a ruthless demon and playing underhanded tricks or something like that. But at the same time, she does seem to kind of completely embrace the idea So she kind of does both at the same time. Which is why it also has to introduce the idea that, the magical girl can stop a truck with one hand like a superhuman, and she's just like, how do I do that? First, you magical girl, I'll get you next time, or something like that. So, it's a weird combination. I don't think it doesn't work. It didn't feel like they were necessarily contradictory, but conceptually it feels like they probably should be. The magical girl here is actually very notable as pretty much the secondary character. I mean, this show's really all about the interaction between them, but it's not really their interaction as a demon girl and a magical girl per se. It's kind of there, but it's really interesting because, there's something off about her as a magical girl presented there, and I think a lot of it is that it's designed where she's past that idealized phase. She's a little jaded, maybe not specifically about magical girl stuff in general, but more like she doesn't find it as enjoyable. There's some horrible things she has remembering that, but she's just kind of very nonchalant about everything, and she actually likes the main character. And I could go into some of the details which were kind of weird until I guess closer to the end, where you get some hints, and it's nothing. It's nothing like, oh well, she was rescued as a little girl. They don't actually have a direct personal relationship with each other underlying this. It's just one of those things where you really don't learn too much more about the personality of the main girl. You kind of learn a bit about her history, of basically not living in too good of a condition, because that's part of the curse that the victorious Light Clan imposed on the Dark Clan. I'm not sure if those were the same terms they used, but for the most part, you learn more about the magical girl, I think. And it doesn't really play it off like we should be thinking of it as this huge mystery. It's just one of those things where you're really watching the show to see the two of them interact, and magical girl is a bit of a, I'm trying to remember the right term for it, but I don't know, she's very, very athletic training sort of themed. And it's just sort of interesting because, it's basically the magical girl is kind of coaching the demon girl. So, I guess I don't want to go into too much more details there. Overall, one definitive weakness to the series is it almost feels like there should be more stuff happening than actually do. And sometimes this is definitely the series' own fault, where it reaches a point where it talks about how the demon girl probably needs to help the magical girl keep the city safe. And the only stuff we ever see in the show that would be related to that would be when another magical girl appears on the scene, and that one has a curse on her, and that curse just kind of makes things kind of unfortunate for people near her. But that curse is pretty much the only really bad thing we see. Everything else is left very up in the air, and so it's sort of like the show suggests this stuff, and we're kind of interested because, we got our main girl, the demon girl, and we are kind of interested to see what happens to her. We want to see her succeed. We want to see her become a good person. We want to see nice things happen to her because, she's cute. And despite her strange personality embracing of some of the demon girl concepts, we want to see her just do the right thing, be a good person, something like that. Um, so I guess it's a real problem. It's supposed to be very relationship focused between the two main characters, the definite main character and the supporting. I'm not even sure you can really call her an antagonist, because she's kind of set up that way, but she kind of doesn't behave that way. Yeah, I just had that thought, and that's a really weird one. But yeah, anyways, pretty entertaining. I think it does its job well. But the only other thing I watched was One Piece Season 10 Voyage 2. And it did feel like it's been a while since Voyage 1 came out, but I think as I was loading up the disc and chatting with my friends saying, yes, this happened, I think we remembered a lot of the main events from the last one pretty well. For the contents of what happened in here, it's definitely strange. I mean, the other one was strange. It left off with a couple of strange things that I did not quite understand why it did those. This one gave some history of the situation they're dealing with, and it doesn't feel like that history jives with other history talked about. In particular, they're on an island where a disaster supposedly happened, but there was also a battle between two Navy admirals on the island, which left it in its current really weird state. But that had to have happened after the disaster, and their timeline for what happened on the island after the disaster, as explained in this one, seems to contradict that other one, just because that other one would kind of suggest... Yeah. So it's weird. And there's a possibility that they are aware of this and they will mention something about it, but for the stuff that did happen in it and it did set up, I can kind of see it's setting up for a really big arc, which doesn't involve, I think, the direct baddies that we've seen up to this point. But that could make it like other arcs where you've got immediate baddies and they're only stepping stones for the story to build up. So, I am kind of curious if it's going to be pretty interesting after this. It wasn't bad. Still strange. I don't know how to talk about it without, talking about very specific details. But it was one of those ones where it would have been nice to see another episode or two, maybe. It felt like it ended at the wrong part, but I think if you're in the middle of any big One Piece story arc, that's pretty much what happens. And that's nobody. Oh, come on. So, other than that, yeah, duh, fucking phones. Potential spam detected. Yeah, duh, that's why I hung up on them. But, yeah, outside of that, most of the reason I haven't really watched any other animes, I haven't exactly decided what I want to watch. I know that I left on the pile here a certain Scientific Accelerator, but I think before I watch that, I should finish, Magical Index Season 3, and I think I was on Season 3 Part 2, it's at the bottom of that pile there, so that's like the really close to me, very important pile. But I just ended up not doing that. Part of it was, Sunday was... Well, it's basically, Sunday was dedicated to celebrating my brother's birthday, which actually happened, 9 days ago, I guess. But putting that aside, the celebration was this weekend, and a lot of my time and energy was focused on not only preparing for that, but going there. Not that I did a lot of preparations, but mostly it just means, when your entire Sunday disappears because you wake up, do some stuff, and then go up there, then that's just what happens. And I hadn't quite decided what other random thing I would watch if I didn't throw Index in. And the truth of the matter is, in my spare time, I've just been more focused on the Blender Unity project. You know, that my first VR chat world, basically. And I've reached the point where the Blender thing was built up enough that now I needed to start seeing how it felt in VR chat, basically. So, turned out it was pretty easy to get over Unity. I thought it would be, but since I didn't know, there was always the possibility that there could be some snags, and I had an idea of what some of those snags could be. And it turns out I didn't have to use any of that information, and I've been able to do updates in Blender and just copy it over into the Unity directory, and Unity says, oh, I guess I'll pick this up and reprocess this. And then, you know, I make adjustments. So most of this has actually just been fixing little tweaks there, where it turned out that, like, the way I had aligned certain doors and stairs, you couldn't go back through a door, or you couldn't go down certain stairs, but you could go up them. One piece of ceiling I forgot to create, and then later had to edit because it was related to the stairs thing that I mentioned before. You know, a lot of weird things like that. Excusez-moi. Let's see. The toilet ended up the toilet that I created from scratch. You know, it turned out to be too big. It's like, that's a toilet that could eat a person. But you know, I shrunk it and got the dimensions right. And part of that was, you know, I've been measuring the way things work. Like, kitchen countertops are about 3 feet high and about 2 feet deep, as far as I can tell. This may not be completely universal, but that's kind of what I went with. But then I made a copy of that in the bathroom for the bathroom sink, and when I did a kind of gut check, I noticed that the bathroom sink is definitely much lower than the kitchen sink, which means that needed to actually be shrunk a little bit, and that seemed to make things work. And at the same time, since the toilet was sized relative to the fact that the back of a toilet is about the same size as the counter in a bathroom, it's like, oh, okay, I guess it means it's 3 feet high, right? But I don't think so. The real problem is my tape measure is kind of buried in a box, and if I had 2 of them, then I'd probably just be measuring way more stuff, just way more on the whim. And, you know, there's all these little adjustments like that. The bed that I didn't create but came with another Alice house that I wanted to use for reference, but I ended up getting with some of the assets, the doors, a couple chairs, a table, and a bed. Well, you know, that bed ended up being kind of so low on the ground you could probably stub your toe up. I'm like, feels like this needs to be higher. You know, there's all these little tweaks like that. And the other thing that's kind of slowed me down is colliders. So you may look at you may hear that and you think, oh, is that something that crashes into something? Well, it kind of is, but it's really just a general physics object idea wherein a model is just a bunch of polygons and they aren't necessarily solid. So you need to define what means solid, and there are a couple strategies you can use there. But while you can use certain, I'm going to call them cheap methods, in particular the mesh collider, which a mesh would be a collection of polygons, I guess. So basically, the different parts of my house are different things. So, like, all the walls, I put those in one mesh, except for the ones in the tower, because those had this special consideration, weird angles and stuff like that. But even that, there's walls and tower walls in my thing, and I could have just done that with a mesh collider, and maybe that would be efficient, I don't know. But their suggestion is generally that you try and recreate shapes approximately with box colliders. Now, with walls, I'm trying to be pretty exact, and I've basically left the mesh colliders to things I don't think I can approximate with box colliders. In particular, I have some spiral stairs, and because the steps begin narrow and get wide, but are basically a parallelogram, I'm not sure if I can use rectangles to do it, especially since you can't shear them in Unity, I think. And then the guardrails are also parallelograms. Maybe I'm thinking trapezoids, parallelograms. Yeah, trapezoid. So the steps are trapezoidal. The handrails are parallelograms, so they were a square texture that I kind of shifted like that for going up and around. That stuff I did not think I could actually approximate very well with those. And then the roofs and their weird angles. Some of the angles I could do, but others with triangles, and I would have to do weird mesh things already on my own. So I did some mesh colliders with those, but everything else I've been approximating with box colliders, which pretty much means I'm building up the house again, but in the collider space, so that certain walls are solid, certain furniture is solid, and you can stand on top of it. Things like that. And in fact, the solid furniture thing is only a very recent thing. Yeah, okay. I was just thinking of, anyways, that's stuff I've been working on. It's really nice to kind of walk around and see, oh, hey, this is actually working out. All I have to do at this point is, continue polishing. So right now, the shelves are solid, but they're empty. And I'm going to fill them with books because Alice Margatroyd is a shut-in who won't send people away, but she's definitely somebody who likes spending her own time, I think. Which means lots of books. I'm going to need to put some boxes in the attic so it's not just a table. Things like that. So there's still work to do, but there's enough stuff there where I can walk around. I'll be adding, making where you can sit in the chairs and things like that. It's actually surprisingly coming along pretty well. There's a part of me hoping that I'll be able to start playing around more technically once, yeah, basically once I get finished with all this little detail. Oh, I need to add this collider, and it needs to be aligned just right. No, actually, I think the problem right now is that I need to kind of figure out how to make it feel like this house is in the middle of a forest. Because right now, it's just kind of this grassy thing floating in the middle of the air. A pretty standard start. So, fun stuff. I don't know if I'll walk around it here on camera or not, because most of this stuff is me just kind of figuring things out, applying things I already know, and obviously I haven't made videos on the things I already know. I think some people have wandered in and seen, oh yeah, he created this thing, thanks for doing this. But when I upload those videos, I upload them unlisted. If they're visible to you, they're visible because I put them in a playlist so they can be found. But for the most part, I found that mostly y'all don't really care too much about those videos. And you probably don't mind the occasional one, but when I do things like spam a lot of them, that's not appreciated. So I'm just kind of being considerate in that case. Especially since there's plenty of videos on this stuff. I'm just adding my own spin to a lot of things out there. But hopefully I'll reach the point where I'll be able to start doing things with this world that are things that people haven't seen before. Not that I'm going to do anything big and spectacular, but I just have little ideas for things to make the world kind of playful and fun, and people can say, okay, that was an interesting experience. Nothing to blow your mind, but just kind of fun. So, yeah. Anyways, that's the update for everything. Y'all, have a nice week.